guys remember a time that Charles Oliveira was going to fight Islam Makhachev? Do you remember that? And they were going to go out to Fight Island to do it. So this guy that has nothing to do with anything, named Volkanovski, inserts himself. He says, I'm going to be the backup fighter for that. It's not my weight class. I haven't been asked. I have no ranking. I have no standing. I've never even competed in this weight class. I am going to be the backup. You know what a ridiculous idea that is? I mean, in hindsight, really, have you ever seen anybody do that? Invite themselves to a party. They weren't asked to come. Oh, by the way, at a weight class that he's not in. I mean, have you ever stood back and really thought how ridiculous that is? But he wouldn't take no for an answer. And nobody else stepped forward. And before you know it, the date approached. The scales opened. Dropped down to his tighty whities. And stepped on. The next day, takes a seat. And before he leaves the arena that night, he's face-to-face with the new champion setting up a match. I mean, that happened. It wasn't overly sophisticated or complex. That happened. But I don't see anybody doing that. Just by example, at 170 pounds, what would Gilbert Burns have to do to get a world title fight? And I'm looking at all the things that he has done. The guys that he has fought, that he has beat, that come from behind. You guys remember his fight with Wonder Boy? Possibly Gilbert Burns' best performance ever was a come from behind, win the last half of the third round against Wonder Boy. I could play that game all day with Gilbert. But I think we will all acknowledge how much he's willing to do and has already done to get a title fight. And then we can do that same thing with Blahal. What is Blahal willing to do? My goodness, look at what he's already done. Where is Colby? We're hearing about maybe Chimaev versus Colby, which make a level of sense, but now also talk that Chimaev's leaving the weight class. I mean, we're starting to get down to just a few guys. And what would a path look like for Gilbert to get a world title fight? I think there's a very clear path for Gilbert to get a world title fight this year, but I think there's also a clear path for Gilbert to get a world title fight next. And what is going on with Kamaru Usman? I mean, these are fair questions. That fight, Leon versus Kamaru, which has been many, many months in the making, that fight's been in the making since the head kick heard around the world. Guys, grab your little smartphones right now. Go to something called the internet. You're not going to find an interview. You're not going to find a press release. You're not going to find a quote or a quip about the fight with Kamaru versus Leon. What do we make of that? Is that as simple as guys are absolutely focused? They're zeroed in. This is the trilogy. All the chips are on the table. I mean, is that the story? Is the silence itself the message? Maybe. I'll drink to that, sure. Or is it something else? I mean, you never know if a fight's going to happen. You never know. We've been to the arena before. You guys remember Kevin Randleman, rest his soul? He slipped on a pipe in the back. The show had opened. The arena was full. The pay-per-views are sold. He's warming up and couldn't walk out there. I mean, I'm just sharing with you. You never know when somebody's going to go. But there is something about Kamaru Usman and Leon in March that doesn't feel right. Can we agree on that? That thing is radio silent. With a hand injury to Kamaru, a statement solving, oh no, this fight's done. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm suggesting for you, if you go ahead and take a look at this landscape, and you look at what Volkanovski just did and we saw it work, the effort and the hard work and the heavy lifting that Gilbert Burns has already shown, it would just seem as though you take that one more step. Hey, guess what? I'm going to be the backup fighter that night. It would just seem like there's massive reward to that. It would seem like there's massive opportunity to that. And perhaps that isn't the path that you would take. But I do see within this sport where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Something has already happened. Go take a guy and go copy it. I'm watching Davidson Figueiredo, who is a draw. He's interesting. With the crazy haircut, the sunglasses, his fighting style, the guy's interesting. The problem is, he's having a hard time competing one day after weighing in at 125 pounds. This has been blatantly obvious. Stevie Wonder could see this. It is not a skill issue. He is drained. So what's he going to do, guys? He's going to leave and go up to 135 pounds. He's going to be an extremely meaningful player at 135 pounds right away. But I haven't heard anybody call him out. I haven't heard anybody at 135 try to align themselves. And there's some 35-pounders that have been around for a long time, and they can't get matched up. They can't get the right guy. They can't get the opportunity, right? I mean, it's everybody's story within the sport. Everybody goes through the same thing. You search for an opportunity, then you try to find your skills, then you get your skills, and you look at the opportunity, you try to find somebody to come up and match you that you can leapfrog and get some shine off of. It's the game that everybody plays. But you now have a wild card called Deiveson Figueiredo. He's coming up, and he matters. Why would you not align yourself? And a lot of you can't get in there with a number one contender. A lot of you can't get in there with a world champion. He's neither at this weight class. That's why it makes so much sense. You have a top guy that hasn't been put in that spot yet. And I could really tell you some dream fights for him. Ricky Simón versus Deiveson Figueiredo, for me, works all day. Dominic Cruz versus Deiveson Figueiredo. I mean, if we're going to do this, let's get this party started. And I'll just share with you my surprise. My surprise that nobody studied what Volkanovski did. Nobody studied it, and if they did, they didn't copy it. Why? Why wouldn't you copy that? Are you not aware that this trilogy has a feel? It has a feel to it. Something's off. Are you not aware that Deiveson Figueiredo is not going to have a ranking, but he's a world champion? And he could be one win and no more than two needed. To be in a world title fight at 135 pounds, he creates a massive opportunity. He also has beautiful placement on cards. He's a meaningful guy. I give you $1 million to point out in a mugshot 10 135-pounders. You couldn't do it. No way. But I give you $100 to point out Deiveson Figueiredo, a different hairdo and sunglasses. You'll grab him every single time. He's a meaningful guy, but he proposes an opportunity right now. Maybe you can't get on the docket with a number 2 guy or a number 1 guy or a former champion. He's none of those things, not at this weight class. That's why the opportunity is now. Somebody should seize it, both in a backup position for the trilogy that's not being discussed, and for the introduction of a former world champion into a new division.